Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's jump into a story where a couple moves into what they think is their perfect new apartment until they meet Kathy, their downstairs neighbor. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Crazy neighbor has been calling the police on us for 3 months. When my fiance and I moved into our first apartment together, we thought we'd finally found our peaceful spot. New apartment complex, great amenities, and a nice space to start building our life with our dog. But just 2 weeks in, we encountered an unexpected obstacle. Our downstairs neighbor, Kathy. At first, we had no idea it was her. Out of nowhere, we started receiving vague complaints from management about noise. Things like stomping, furniture rolling, and even loud bass. We were baffled. We don't own a subwoofer, don't stomp around, and as much as we racked our brains, we couldn't figure out what was causing the alleged noise. But wanting to keep the peace, we started tiptoeing around our own home and became hyper-aware of every little sound. We even started turning on our dog cameras overnight, capturing hours of footage just to make sure we weren't the problem. A month in, we received a formal noise violation letter. This time we had to respond immediately, so we did. We explained to management that the timestamps and the complaints didn't even line up with times we were home, and we had no clue what loud bass they were hearing since our entire setup is modest. Thankfully, management took the time to review our dog cam footage with us and started to see our side. They seemed convinced that maybe it was all a misunderstanding or that Kathy might simply need time to adjust to regular apartment noises above her. However, things didn't stop. Not even a week later, the police arrived at our door around 11 p.m. while I was mid-shower. My fiance, who'd just been lounging on the couch, was equally confused. They told us they were responding to a noise complaint, which felt surreal since it was just the two of us home, quietly winding down. The police left and management didn't seem too fazed by it, but that wasn't the end. About 3 days later, I finally met Kathy in person. I'd been out walking our dog when she approached me aggressively, claiming we were ruining her peace and quiet. I kept it civil, explaining that we were doing everything we could to keep things down, but she wouldn't hear it. It was then I noticed her habit of watching us through her blinds. Every time we were outside, she was there scrutinizing us as though every sound we made was a personal affront. After that run-in, we scheduled another meeting with management to discuss options. We reviewed more footage with them, explained our side in detail, and even suggested that maybe Kathy was overreacting. Management said they'd take that into consideration and would communicate with her. Things finally quieted down for about 3 weeks, and we thought we'd put the whole thing to rest. Then last night happened. My fiance and I had been out for dinner and got home around 11 p.m., leaving the dog cam on to record while we were gone. We'd been home for barely an hour, quietly winding down in bed when the police were banging on our door again at 12:45 a.m. Our dog barked, which is what woke us up, and we went to the door half asleep and completely bewildered. The officers didn't waste any time. They launched right into accusing us of disturbing the peace. I tried to explain, but one officer just cut me off, calling me "your girl" to my fiance, which added insult to injury. They even threatened to throw us in cell number 1 and 3 if they had to come back. The intimidation worked. We packed up and left for my mom's house that night, unable to even sleep in our own home. We felt so helpless. The next morning, with video footage in hand, we contacted an attorney. He reviewed everything and was appalled, so he drafted a formal cease and desist letter to Kathy, clearly outlining our evidence and warning her of potential legal consequences if her harassment continued. We also went to the police station where we shared our video footage and detailed the constant harassment, hoping it might finally get through to them that Kathy's complaints had no basis. Since the letter was delivered, we haven't heard a peep from Kathy, no more police knocking at odd hours, no more complaints from management, and thankfully, no more awkward glares. It seems that Kathy's antics have finally come to a stop, and we can finally enjoy our home in peace. It's obvious she wanted you to move out, but after you contacted a lawyer, she was just scared to continue. Great job, OP. And our second story. Uncle stole my N64 from my cousin, refused to return it till my dad threatened to call the police. This happened back in 1999, and a similar story reminded me of it. My uncle was always a piece of work, and not just a blatant thief at times, but a major cheapskate to boot. When I was 13, back in 1999, I got a brand new N64 for my birthday with some used cartridges of both Mario 64 and Mario Kart to go with it. My cousin, who was a complete, at the time, brat, was all over it the next time he came to visit. The kid really wasn't so bad, but he'd get violent if he lost a game or didn't get something he wanted. I was playing my N64 in my room when he asked to come in. I didn't mind and figured I could play against him at Mario Kart. We played the first circuit, and I dominated at 100cc while he came in last each time. By the fourth race at the desert level, he totally lost it, crying that I wouldn't let him win, and then started punching me. The kid was like 7, but he liked to aim for the crotch. He just barely missed hitting me in the junk, so I dragged him out of my room. When I told my uncle what my cousin had done, his response was, "So, why didn't you just let him win?" And I told him, there's no way I could have, because even if I wasn't playing, he never even came close to being anywhere but last. My uncle just sneered and said, "No excuses, he's little, and you should let him win." So I suggested a compromise of letting my cousin play by himself so he could get some practice in at the game. Everyone agreed, and I thought that'd be that. But even when I set it to 50cc, my little cousin couldn't do any better than 6th place on any race. He went ape while playing Toad's Turnpike and threw the controller against the wall. I was mad, but tried to stay patient with him by saying he just needed some more practice. Little cousin said he couldn't practice because he didn't have an N64 at home because his dad wouldn't buy him one. I said I was sorry about that and decided it was time to shut the game off because I didn't want to risk something getting broken. My little cousin went crying to his dad that he wanted an N64, and he just told him they didn't have the money. Yet Uncle was buying things like beer, cigarettes, and lottery tickets almost daily, so I figured that was it. And they left not long after. But the next time I went back to my room, I noticed that my N64 was gone. I immediately called my parents. My dad was furious, and my mom tried to make excuses for her brother because he was a single father. But my dad packed us all into his old station wagon, and we drove to my uncle's house. My dad pounded on my uncle's door until he finally opened it. Inside, we could easily hear little cousin playing my Mario Kart game. My dad demanded they return the games and console immediately. My uncle actually denied having it till we pointed out we could hear it, after which he just slammed the door in our faces. My father pounded on the door again and threatened to call the police if he didn't return the N64, and then yelled that he still had the receipts so the police could tell it was mine. That's when the N64 stopped playing and I heard little cousin start screaming. My uncle came out with the N64, the 2 games, cords, and both controllers in a plastic bag and practically shoved it in my hands, then slammed his door shut again. Little cousin was still screaming and trying to open the door, but my uncle wouldn't let him out. I checked everything in the car, and one of the controller's joysticks had actually been broken. My parents apologized to me and said that my uncle wouldn't be welcome in our house again for some time. Then they took me to the local game store and bought a replacement controller for me. It was red, so that was a nice upgrade over the previous gray one. A few months later, my uncle was jailed for trying to steal from a store. Don't remember what he tried to take, but my mother decided to file a petition for custody of my cousin without asking my father. That led to a big argument, but we ended up taking in my little cousin anyway, and over the next year or so, unspoiled him. His father never bothered to come back for him, so he sort of became like my little brother. And now he's a pretty good guy. He's still terrible at Mario Kart, though. Probably the best thing for him was being taken in by your parents, actually. It's good that he's grown to be a good man. And our last story. Neighbor keeps driving over my lawn to get to his driveway, and he's a cop. Our new neighbors moved in about a month ago. They seemed like a normal couple at first, with the husband being a police officer in a neighboring city. At first, there were no issues, but soon he started parking his police car right in front of our mailbox. I thought it was odd, but I didn't want to cause trouble with someone in law enforcement. Then he suddenly stopped parking there, probably because the mail carrier left him a warning note. But the real issue started soon after. I noticed deep tire tracks and destroyed gnomes in my yard, especially when it rained, which made a muddy mess. Then I saw him, clear as day, driving his police car through my yard to park at the back of his driveway behind their 2 personal cars. I went over one evening to talk to him, hoping to keep things civil. "Hey," I started, "I think we need to talk about my yard. Looks like your car's been going through it, and it's really tearing up the grass." He crossed his arms and gave a short laugh. "That's not me," he said, barely looking up. "And even if it were, it's just grass. It'll grow back." Annoyed but trying to stay polite, I replied, "But it's more than just grass. This is my property, and it's being damaged." He shrugged, smirking a little. "Look, it's just a couple of tire marks. I don't see how you can prove it's my car doing it." His dismissive attitude was infuriating. I could see he didn't care and probably thought he could get away with it because of his job, so I decided to approach things differently. After making sure I legally could, I got approval to extend my fence along the edge of my yard, specifically designed to keep him from pulling this stunt. It wouldn't block his driveway, just his access to my lawn. A week later, the fence was installed, sturdy and solid, making it impossible for him to cut through my property. The first morning after the fence was up, I watched from my window as he came home, looking half asleep. He pulled his police car up, fully expecting to roll onto my lawn, only to slam on the brakes as he spotted the fence blocking his usual route. He sat there for a moment, clearly trying to figure out a way around it, but it was clear he was stuck. I went outside with a little wave. "Good morning," I called out cheerfully. "I hope the new fence doesn't bother you." He glared, his face turning red. "Is this because of the yard thing? Seriously?" he snapped. "Well," I replied, keeping my tone light, "you did say it was just grass. I figured a nice, strong fence would keep it that way." He grumbled something under his breath, but I just smiled. Since then, he's had no choice but to use his own driveway properly. I haven't had a single tire mark in my yard since. I wonder what his superiors would say about using a government vehicle to commit property damage. Hey guys, thank you all for watching.